Welcome back and welcome to Do It for the Story. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm Morgan.
I'm Stacey.
Oh my.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We've had a fun last couple weeks.
We have busy couple weeks.
And so it's really exciting to be back on the couch. I got to say that.
Back on the couch. And so you'll see again you'll see what we've been up to, but we can say it last week.
So you can drop it.
Yeah, last weekend was the Annapolis Film Fest, which was amazing. Shout out to all those that put it on, especially Lee and Patty and Elise Colgan and Ariel that we work with closely. And it was great. We got to see a lot of cool films, meet a lot of amazing artists. I will say I was under the weather, so Morgan really took a lot on for diffs.
I took a lot on for diffs, but I will say, Stacey, you full on rallied to be able to sit on the couch for us and do the interviews, because
more on that.
There was literally only one interview that you missed, which we're definitely going to drop and talk about.
Yeah, of the sit downs.
Of the sit downs. That's
Red
what I mean.
carpet I missed.
Red carpet you missed. But I mean, those are small, short interviews. Needed you on the couch and you made it. So
we did.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so it was awesome. It was cool because it was our first time actually with diffs being the interviewers of other folks,
and
not
also
each other.
being like a media surrounded. We were so welcomed, and it was
E. Falco, Jennifer Esposito.
Yeah,
it
was so cool, and it was so fun and so inspiring, and just was like, we're in the arts environment where we always knew we belonged. That's what I
felt welcomed,
like.
and so we were saying welcome in. They were welcoming.
They were welcoming us. We were welcoming them. Everyone felt very welcome.
Yeah. So it's been it's spring in here in Annapolis, and so that has been giving me some energy this week.
And I got to say, for those that haven't visited our small town, spring is our time to shine, and then it just continues. It starts really March. And it goes all the way through basically Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We're still...
because then we got boat show seasons.
Yeah, because boat show then comes through. And
there's always something going on, but the activities
are popping. So, come and visit us. And maybe drop us a DM if you come into town. We would love to meet some listeners.
We would love to meet some listeners, and we would love to, give you some recommendations, tell you how the locals do.
Who knows? If you're even chill enough and we're really loving the vibe, which I feel like any listener I'd be like, I'll invite you on the boat. Well, I'll give you a time.
Wow, get out on the J30, get the sails up.
Yeah,
welcome in.
Maybe we could even do a little putzing around and borrow
we'll have to talk
the whaler.
We'll have to talk about that in another episode. The sailing experience and
when my life was saved. We'll talk about that.
Well, when Morgan's life was saved on a sailboat. Shout out to Vinny, Mitch Buchanan, but also just my experience too of using the lingo and people thinking I'm in the sailing community. So
I love that though. You're good about using the lingo that it sounds like you.
When you're running bow, you have to be confident.
Yeah.
Anyway,
bang them hard. Well, yeah. Should we dive into today's topic, today's story?
I think we should dive in. I think today's topic, we had a lot of amazing feedback from episode number 1, which was, the inaugural episode. So we're getting a lot of support, but it also talked about, just our lives and the perspective of being biracial Black women and kind of just giving people a little bit of insight into
what our life was like
growing up.
Yeah.
And still is,
yeah.
And so there was a lot of feedback from that. There was some people asking, like, we want more, we want to learn more about this, but also rather than it just being let's tell you about, again, we can focus on things we went through that can also help you if you are navigating this, if you've been in it before, if you're a parent, you don't know who your kid's going to date and end up be with. And that is the topic of interracial dating. Fun fact, we have not been in relationships that are not every relationship Morgan and I have been in is an interracial relationship. It can't not be when you're a biracial person, unless I'm dating another biracial black man or dating a biracial black man who happens to have a white mom and a black dad, or, you know, black parent, white parent.
Right.
Otherwise,
It's interracial dating.
you always outside.
Yep. Never sure what they're thinking on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. So when today we were thinking of, well, what topics do we go through? And for reasons that we don't need to get into, we had been thinking about our relationships from back home and, kind of where our dating journey began. And so then we were like, oh, maybe we should talk about interracial dating today. And for us, and this is Morgan speaking right now because we've gotten that feedback. But for us,
loud and clear, folks, we sound alike. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We love that.
But for us, our interracial dating did start, back home in Emmitsburg. And again, from the inaugural episode, you have learned and heard about the Emmitsburg, Thurmont area, and how the experiences that we had that were at times very difficult from a race perspective. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, our dating starting there, the boyfriends that we had from back home and their families were very accepting.
Yeah.
And to the point where I think I was unaware of what was to come.
I was thinking the same thing. I was definitely naive.
Very naive. I think, I think those relationships, those families made us, whether it was assume or just feel that if you're dating me, then the families would also be accepting of me because that's where you came from.
Right.
And that's what we had experienced.
Right.
So lo and behold, no, that's not that was the majority of, our situations. That really wasn't the case. And, I think those relationships from back home, not to say we need to get deep into them because I don't think that's the point, but, they were very, for my relationship, again, this is Morgan speaking, the family that, and both families, like the mother's family, the father's family, were very connected to their religions and very just like love thy neighbor types of folks and very committed to that.
Right.
And so for me, I think, looking back, I think that was something that really drove for them. And I think also too, like they grew up with mom and dad.
Yeah.
Like
they grew up with our parents.
They grew up with our parents. And so I think that they really, between that and their religious of like just accepting of all people, I think really, was kind of the base.
You already knew of them. So they were only like pre-vetted as, if you were dating someone who was a son of someone that mom and dad probably known of as a racist, they would have been like,
yeah, there would have been pause or, yeah.
But this was like, oh gosh, his parents were so great.
So nice.
Yeah, his grandparents were amazing.
They were so giving.
That's the benefit of living in a small town for, especially that. I can't imagine if you're a parent, right, with kids dating, that's the benefit of people knowing each other to be able to have that like pre-vet.
And then I
one of Richard's daughters?
Right, exactly. And so I don't know if it was that, you one of Richard's daughters, or if it was again their, the way that they were raised.
I'm sure both.
Probably both. But also then, again, what spoiled me was this was my first boyfriend. So I just then, you're kind of assuming, I mean, I was in college.
I was going to say, because you were in college.
I was in college, but also, so then we were partying, we were having all this fun, and there was never any judgment around. What I'm trying to say is,
you didn't have an issue with your first relationship.
Not only not an issue, but we were also, we were college kids. We were kind of ridiculous. And in the, we were partying, we were having fun, we were staying out late. And all they ever, I'm not saying they condoned us being over the top at times, but there was always this, we love you anyway. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so it wasn't even just the fact that I never heard a racist thing. It was also like,
you were treated like how mom and dad would have reacted.
Exactly.
And I think that is
so
the
it was like
there.
Doubly like extreme safety that kind of then I think put me in a place of this is how it's going to be.
This is how it's going to be. And like, of course you're not, it's not like you're thinking, okay, hate doesn't exist. Obviously we've seen it, but you're like, yeah, just like how I've done growing up. And I've seen my parents growing up in this small town, and then, raising kids in this small town, is that you're always going to look for your safe places.
Yeah.
And those pockets, because that's the thing. In the first episode, I think, of course we were talking about our experience growing up as, Black biracial kids in Emmitsburg and in Thurmont, as where we went to high school. Yes, racism there, small town like we talked about, but also there are great people there.
Yes.
It's not the, I don't even want to say majority minority. There are a lot of great people that we were safe with.
Right.
So
totally. But I think the reason I mention all that too is because your situation was your first boyfriend, which was in high school, was very different in that I don't mean the safety was there, the comfort, the the no microaggression language, whatever, but that family came from, they were not from home.
Right.
They came from Montgomery County. For anyone that knows Montgomery County,
very diverse.
Very diverse, oftentimes very liberal leaning.
Montgomery County, for those not living in Maryland, it's a suburb of D.C.
Yeah.
Like it's the suburb county. So
very diverse. So
majority of people, if you're living in Montgomery County, you like work in D.C. as well, or
it's all types of people.
All types of people.
And so while yes, your first boyfriend, Stacey's, his family came from that other location, they came from Montgomery County, the idea that like, we're all accepted. They were very liberal. Like, you learned, and I'm sure then I learned too, from their family about certain politics. Like they knew Obama before we did.
That was a thing. So I will say my high school boyfriend's mom was, she was a single mom, who, like Morgan said, grew up in Montgomery County, Rockville too. So Rockville being more so than, whatever, suburb of DC, like I said. She was a teacher in Montgomery County as well. So she's also teaching. I remember her talking about different students of hers. She's also a special education teacher.
The different families.
So again, with, marginalized groups, like she's also seeing it from that angle.
Right. She's seeing the different communities closely.
Different communities. And so, but she went, she grew up in Rockville. So she grew up with more diversity than I was exposed. She was probably exposed to different cultures that I wasn't, for sure.
Absolutely.
But her mother, so my high school boyfriend's grandmother, they were very close, very like generational raising family. She was reminded me of our grandma Muir, our mom's mom, in that she was an outspoken, white woman grandmother that was very liberal. She was very much, literally I did learn about, and I graduated high school in 2005. I learned about Obama from them before he even had a presidential bid. Mm-hmm. And I remember his grandmother saying, like, you got to listen to this interview to all of, it wasn't to me, it was the family at the table.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is going to be our next president. He's phenomenal. And so, I, like you, in that situation, I'm just thinking,
they've accepted me. So this is what they think. You're assuming that's what they're showing you. So you're assuming that that's pretty common.
Yeah. And just to your point, I'm assuming that if I'm picking someone who's kind, stands up for me, has told me that's not their views, that their family is going to also mirror those same views.
Yep.
And so I never had an issue. Same with your experience of your first boyfriend from home, from our town. I never, not one microaggression.
Yeah.
It was quite the opposite. It was in times where I think I mentioned it, or we talked about in the first episode, where as a kid, sometimes if things happen, at school or said to you, you feel bad telling your parents. not because you don't feel safe telling your parents, because
You feel bad.
you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
You're like, especially after it's happened, I've got it. Like we said, we would go to each other, sisters, like, handle it. At times, it just was situational. I didn't necessarily like go to his mother. It was like, it just so happened that I came home from basketball practice.
Right. And
I was
there.
going to his house and she sees me crying.
Yep.
Or she's like, what's going on? Can tell I'm off. Or I go to her house after being at the Super Bowl party where the friend's dad is screaming, I hate all niggers. And that really happened. And it was his grandmother. It was actually his grandmother. That incident happened because his mom was out at another Super Bowl party as well. His grandmother sat me down, embraced me, and said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that happened.
And I actually want to ask, when you both came home, not that I'm not saying that it matters, but I'm just curious about how it went down. When you both came home, was it that you told the story? Were you upset? Did your boyfriend tell the story?
Said, why are you?
Why
the game
home?
was still on.
Yeah, why home?
She knew where we were, and she's like, why are you home so early? What's going on? And saw us walk in. It was like a split level house, so you couldn't not see us. And she was like sitting in the living room, and she was like, what's going on? And I said, and I think his mom was there, but I just remember specifically his grandmother's reaction to it, because his mom had already sadly been there for me with other racist moments that weren't from kids, that were from high school coaches. And his grandmother said, I home. And so my high school boyfriend started to tell her what happened, and she could tell he was pissed, and I was just demure, and that was not also what she was used to, me just being quiet, like something happened. And so she said, I'm so sorry this happened. That is so not okay. I'm so angry for you. That never should happen. People are so ignorant and stupid, and it doesn't give them an excuse. That is not how we see the world, and that's not how people should see the world. And then she went on to tell me about his grandfather being in situations where having to stand up and speak up and be that voice, like we talk about the allyship. So it was so, in that moment, one, you're also like, this high school boyfriend and I were friends and started, but part of the reason why we started dating was because he told someone when the Klan card incident in English class happened, he said, don't talk shit about my girlfriend. We were not dating. He just said it as a
threatening,
fuck you.
As a threatening, like I'm being serious, like I'm and being very protective.
Because the guy that flew, so in high school English class, this person in my English class showed people sitting behind me his Klan card and then like threw it at my feet kind of thing. And these two guy friends, one of them being the high school boyfriend, again, we were not dating at this point. He was like, watch what you fucking say about my girlfriend. And he was like, you're dating her? He's like, yeah, I am. And I'm not hearing this conversation.
Yeah.
And someone else told me, oh, you should have seen his face when he said that. They're like, oh, when he said he was your girlfriend, he was like, oh, shit. And so that obviously, that endorsement already happened. Somebody had my back, stood up for me. But then hearing...
Didn't recall that was how that went down. Love that.
And didn't... Then, to fast forward a couple months, and then when the Super Bowl incident happens where the dad at the party was pissed that the opposing team scored a touchdown and it was a black player. Imagine that.
I know. It's like, what are you talking about?
Like, do you
fucking idiot?
Yeah. And he's screaming in front of all these kids, and not one person said anything. Not one person said anything. Except for my high school boyfriend. And he just said, get your stuff. Like, we're leaving. Go, let's get the fuck out of here. And I was like, I was in shock. I'm like, oh my God, trying to hide, whatever. We get in the car. I go out and get in the car. And I remember this friend at the time's dad who said it was like, oh, come on. Oh, I'm just kidding. Like, was saying this to my high school boyfriend. And he was like, no, fuck you. Fuck you. Like, I'm sitting in the car, I'm hearing him, a 16-year-old child yelling at a grown-ass man. So then we go home to the high school boyfriend's house. Yeah, that dad never apologized, even when he was confronted by my high school boyfriend's mother and the high school boyfriend again. And so at the house, they were just saying, but I was received by this warmth that, again, it was also just, I don't believe in, coincidence. I do think a lot of things happen for a reason, but like, there's this quote of like, God doesn't give you the people, the places that you want in your life because you want them. It's like to shape you into who you're supposed to be. I truly believe that high school boyfriend experience also is setting a standard for me. But I didn't have any other parent in my high school 4 years that stood up for me when I was treated unfairly or when coaches made racist comments. Only his mother, who sadly is no longer with us. She is, passed away when we were in college. But I'm like, holy shit. The impact she had on me then and now, where that was in 2004. We didn't have internet, like Facebook then. We had internet, but we didn't have like, and I just think how she was still a new parent in my life. This wasn't someone I grew up with from kindergarten or I had played sports with since I was in 6th grade, or this was someone who knew me for like a year at that point. Confronting another parent in the parking lot, saying this is not okay, and then, can you think of any other parent that ever like stepped up for you? Friends, parents?
I'm literally, if you're not watching this, I'm actually thinking and nodding in the sense of like, no.
Right.
I can't think of, if anything, I am immediately thrown to the time where much the opposite. I was in middle school and Lindsay was in 8th grade.
Our oldest sister
Was in 8th grade, and our really good friends, they're same, anyway, I'm trying to like not give away.
Good friend, family from childhood.
Family friend childhood. And at the end of Lindsay's, like it was literally like the last couple days of 8th grade, her friends said to her, something along the lines of, my dad said if I ever bring home, like I can do whatever you want, but don't ever bring home a black man or don't ever marry a black man. And these were people that we had spent an insane amount of time in their home. And Lindsay, I remember her coming home and telling me and being like, it was almost like we didn't even have anything to say. It was just it was shocking because it just wasn't what we expected. And these people were, hippie, seeming super chill.
Then you're questioning and in that you thought they were a safe place.
I thought they were a safe place.
And now you're like,
and now it was like that moment of like, well, maybe nowhere really is until you're really tested, like your high school boyfriend, until there's really a test. Maybe you're never sure. And so answering your question, no, quite the opposite, where it was that realization of, I don't think I'll ever be sure until there's something that actually is confronted and confirmed. And
right. Because I had a similar situation. I had a friend I grew up with, and always had a good relationship with her parents. And her dad said, I found out via someone else that was a family friend of theirs. Her dad was like, I don't want you dating a black guy when we were in high school. And I was like, what?
I was like, then
like, that's weird. He's always cool with my parents. What?
Like, and that's where it was like, so what exactly? Because I mean, we're talking about, and I know who you're talking about, and you know who I'm talking about. And these are people that we had spent, this wasn't like 2 years. This was like, we're talking 8 years of our lives. Like we're talking like an excessive amount of time that we were friends with these people. So then in my head, I'm thinking, so did you think that I have turned out fucked up? Or like, because I don't know. I didn't ask because I'm not going to. I was a child. So what is the problem? Like, were you thinking that there's an issue like you're going to then, because I've heard this before, I don't want you to have issues. I don't want your kid to have issues. I don't want you to deal with almost like what people say about like, oh, I don't want you to be gay because I don't want you to have a harder life or whatever. Like that, whether that's true or not, people say that.
Right.
True or not of why they don't want you to be with someone else. And so that's where then I'm like, so what is it? Is it because you think that I've had a hard life and I have a fucked up life? Or do you think that I'm actually don't have as good of an opportunity? Or do you think I'm fucked up?
We can speculate, what is it? Like you're saying, because I did the same thing. You're like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? You were always so kind to my dad, actually buddy with him at the
and then I'm like, is it all fake? Are you doing that? So, yeah.
Are you all, is it, and again, because at this point too, at least for me, when this comment was made, again, was in high school at that point. So in high school, we went to a public high school then, and we were exposed to a lot of other new families, new kids, not as much of again, we went to the private Catholic school where there's like maximum of 30 kids in the class where, sure, again, it was all white peers, but you were still very much in that, you know them. So we also, I would hear this a lot, well, not black like you. Not black like you. So they also didn't see us as black.
Because they assumed that anyone black is like, speaks a certain way, steals, doesn't have opportunity, lives in, a ghetto.
Yep.
And so it was like this thing of...
is a danger to them and to... is bad, it's embarrassing, is all the things.
All the things. And thinking that they were doing us a solid by saying, well, not
black like your family. You know how many times I heard that? Not black you. And sometimes as a biracial black person,
you're not
I
really
at first
black.
would think,
same
yes,
thing.
I would at first think, wait, are they saying not black like you because they're saying like someone that is full black? And then so I would turn that quickly to, well, my dad is. And I remember saying this to someone one time. I said, what do you mean black like my dad? Like trying to give it. And they're like, no, not like your family. Even further clarifying, because these again are people that.
Yeah, like your family's not
this
dirty.
person I remember having this conversation with. I was like, there's no way in hell you have there's another black person that you've probably ever had a conversation with at this level. And so again, but that's a whole other, we need to put that on a whole other topic of like, not seeing us, but also not having conversations because people look different than you.
Yep.
Like being unwilling to get to know someone.
And
their story.
And to close that out, I think that is a perfect point that like, that's a whole other topic about, your bias, your prejudice, your stereotypes, like closing you off from exposure to something else,
closing
something
you
new,
off and passing
new relationships
it down.
and passing it down, all of those things. But, and it's so interesting too, because, people would look at our family and we constantly got oh, your parents are so amazing. What does your dad do for a living? Is he a doctor? Because they're like, he's so smart, blah, blah, blah. And then even with our grandparents always being around, like, oh, I'm so jealous. Like you guys have such great grandparents and you have and just so interesting that then, whether it be a kid or a parent, to then say, still, I don't want that for you. And it's like, we had safer, warmer homes than so many people around us. And it was because of your overt and committed racism, you still thought that somehow you were better than us.
Yeah. And I think too, it's important to remember that like our parents got married in 1981 and interracial marriage wasn't legal until 1967. So sit on that for a minute, listeners. Dad was born in 1955. So you're like, okay, what is he, 12? When you're 12 years old, when it becomes legal.
Yeah. So that means
think
legal
of when things becoming
frowned
aggressively still. And I won't tell my parents' story for their interracial dating, because that we want to have them on and help. But just to add that in, and it was interesting too, because I remember Mom, we've asked them before about how people saw them and dating, and the one thing that she said was like a close family friend had made a comment like, well, I don't, like endorsing it, like, good, like that's totally fine, I don't mind, that you guys are dating interracially. I think, religion is more of the concern, dating outside your religion. So it's interesting too, because we're talking about our perspective as, dating outside your race and how people view you when you are the other coming into their household, their family, how they might look. It's also people dealing with the religion piece, which I never really I never dealt with. No. But the religion, the culture, that's a whole other relatable.
Which we have never personally dealt with it as, we grew up Catholic. I think, we all know this. USA loves Christianity, but we have many Jewish friends, many Muslim friends that have absolutely dealt with that shit.
My gosh.
And it's the exact same. It's the exact same. It's the exact same situation, exact same scenarios. And, I can only imagine people saying like, oh, well, you're Muslim light, essentially, because like, oh, you don't practice prayer multiple times a day or whatever.
Right.
Like, those are all microaggressions. Right. Those are all still really fucked up things to say.
Right.
You don't know the extension of my family. It doesn't even matter if you do. And it's all in that same vein of thinking that you know the absolute. And then if you just took a little time to ask and understand. And also it's funny too, because like our parents knew that it wasn't going to be, easy necessarily, but just so funny that if you think about that for a second, that two people that decided to, even though of the location that they lived in, the issues that they knew that they would face, about how much love there has to be there, and knowing the basis of a healthy marriage, relationship, family is that unconditional love. So interesting to still think and not have a real understanding, I think, of just love and compassion and what a marriage takes, to still think that that's still not good enough.
Well, it's interesting too, you say that. Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's also like exactly how much love there has to be there that you're willing to be like
risk it all,
uncomfortable
scenarios,
uncomfortable scenarios, having to be the person that, you have to be willing to stand up, or you have to be advocating. And it's interesting because just even recently I've seen on social media people, I don't even know if it's one of those trends, but talking about, or not necessarily a trend. I've seen multiple posts about, specifically with men, when they're with their partners, or I'm sorry, when they're hang out with friends, when their partner's not there, or just making comments like, oh, the old ball and chain, or I need to get away from the kids. That episode. Yeah. And but I've seen so many memes about it, not memes, reels about it, where like little videos of, what about, or I know what it is. The trendy reel is people posting like when you're out with your friends and they're all complaining about their wives or their husbands, and you're over here like, I'm not saying anything because my husband or my wife is so great, I don't relate. And I was thinking about that because we grew up also in a household where like, those little lessons that your parents will say to you, whether it's just manners, like Mom always say your please and thank yous, and Dad, you never know who somebody might be related to. Blood runs thicker than water. Yeah, was always the country, small town, like
don't talk about
anybody because, it'll come back to bite you in the ass. And, but also they would also always say like, you don't talk, I remember Mom and Dad both saying it, like, Dad and I we don't talk about each other like that. When you hear people, and at times it would be because they had been out at something and then they're coming home.
Always a random date night
or like a reunion night or something. They're like, oh my God, it's just the old ball and chain. Mom, you don't put your partner down. Yeah. You don't do it in front of your kids. You don't do it in front of strangers. You don't do it in front of your best friend. It's different if I'm calling Morgan venting. Sorry, your best friend is different.
Best friend is different.
If I'm venting to Morgan about my husband being like, oh,
everybody's going to have an annoying day. Totally.
Very different than me saying, coworkers are like, hey, how was your weekend, Stacey? I'm like, my husband had me doing all this work, like typical, or like I had to clean up everything. My husband.
Or great because I had a weekend by myself, and I understand when you're like, I got a weekend away from the kids,
Yeah.
but no, I'm sorry.
And
not
the old ball and chain thing. And it happens more with men to women, but I hear it both ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, both just ways, can absolutely. It. When I used to work in an office, I would hear people talking about the spouse. I'm like, and I remember saying this to a guy one time. I said, I would be so pissed if I was your wife. And I'm like, it's just disrespectful. I'm like, I don't know her. You're like painting a picture of. So anyway, not to go all the way down that, but I say that with this, like, the level of, you're definitely not going to talk shit about your husband. Because think about if mom's done talking, worried about what people are already thinking, like, add in stereotypes. Yeah. But I think, so there's just a lot of those, like you're saying, we came from this different household. People always commented that, like, there is so much love. So like high school wise, so we both, again, and I think that too, that's obviously learned behavior with mom and dad and the family friend groups we had is like, find your safe place, energy attracts energy. But that's a lot harder to do when now we're in the wild. Mm-hmm. We're not in home anymore. We're in college. We're working our first jobs and we're dating. And we don't have that vetting.
Yep. Yeah, there's no vetting because they're strangers, and there's not even, then there's not even the background vetting of like I'm gonna look at your Instagram.
What was that like for you, Morgan, as your first like unvetted?
My first unvetted, outside of Emmitsburg, Thurmont region dating. Yeah. It was pretty shocking. I'm not gonna lie, and like the thing is, it's like. I don't even know if shocking is the word because at that point, I had dealt with so many racial things, just not in a relationship.
You just felt like naive?
I think naive. I think it was like we mentioned earlier, I think it was that like assumption, oh, this person is accepting of me. This person talks in this certain way. So they are an offshoot of their parents and they're close to their parents must be the same.
Right.
And it was not the case, I mean, this is college. And I start dating someone and, then I don't even remember when the story came up. I'm sure it was around when I was going to meet the parents,
Oh, the prep.
It was the prep of, and again, this person I was dating was still kind of in shock that his mother viewed the world this way. And so what had happened was this guy, and this is Morgan speaking, this guy, his mom was a teacher and was a very... seemingly liberal leaning, always worked in the public school system, worked in these, metropolitan areas, diversity, and was always very supportive of, yada, yada. They seemingly weren't racist
No red flags.
No red flags. And then his mom got jumped. And I should say, whether I don't recall, I'm not going to recall perfectly the story, but as a teacher was either tried to break up a fight or was next to a fight saying, don't do this, da, da, da. And the kids then ended up beating her up at the same moment. And it was Black students. And because she had worked, and again, this very diverse, I'm thinking of it, the way that he talked about it, I'm thinking of working in Frederick, how I would, Okay. In that the population was very diverse. And so she gets jumped by Black kids. It completely then overnight changes her viewpoint, never left the school system, never was going to change her. Like, I'm sure it was one of those scenarios like, I understand these kids were in a difficult situation. And so they da. But then for her with dating, I don't know if maybe she had always thought this way, but then at that point it was like a line drawn in the sand, and she started saying to him, you should not date outside of your race. And he was Italian and he was white. And so that for him was already traumatic. Distinctly remember multiple times him telling me, it's very hard for me to process growing up in a house like this. And then now she's saying this thing.
So just for clarity, because I honestly didn't know this story. So when her attitude change, the beating up happened, that happened while you were dating?
No. That happened before we were dating.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say maybe he had already gone through high school. I remember he was not a young little kid.
Okay.
This was like he had already gone through high school. His mom is a career teacher.
Got it.
Working in the same system.
Got it.
Same system, meaning the same county, whatever.
Right.
And so then whether he was at the end of high school, college, I think he was like actually in college when she got jumped. And she was like, she was not in school then. She was physically like actually injured. Like, you know, it was bad. And so then after that, so he's very much as an almost adult or adult, because again, I don't remember being like, whoa, I've seen my mom's perspective shift then. And again, not saying, I never got the impression that she was saying, you know, the N-word at home or that sort of stuff. It was more of, she then has become, I can't have you have black babies. And he had never even dated someone outside his race. You know, this again, for me was, I think it was occurring for him in his early 20s, and then dates me and is like, I really like you, but I do want to prep you with, like, I don't exactly know how my parents are going to receive it. Then I am dating. We are dating. They do know us. He does know me. And
Did you meet them?
I met them. And the dad, not to me, not in front of my face. They were just like everybody else. They're not going to be racist to your face. But behind my back told the guy I was dating, like, you should not be dating her. Like, understand your mom's going to have a problem. Like, still going to have a problem with this. This is... And this person
For those
was
who aren't
also...
watching my jaw, I don't know why I'm not... But I think because I just didn't know this story that I'm like...
Yeah. And, you know, so then we're also then in an area because I'm, you know, dating this person was near where they are from the area where I went to school, which was Pittsburgh. So then I'm in his environment, seeing him in his environment and realizing it's a bit of a Emmitsburg type of racism there. So then we're randomly in situations and someone uses the N-word and then he's like, okay.
In front of you?
Yeah, in front of me, not knowing who I am. And then, you know, us having to leave and talk about it. And, you know, and again, it was weird too, because I'm dealing with this guy, again, thinking I almost truthfully, the way he would talk about her was almost how your first boyfriend, being from, again, almost like a diverse area, like Montgomery County, just being continually talking then to me of like, I just still can't believe this is now happening to my family, where I thought that we were so liberal and now this is like an overt racism. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm then in the loop of kind of consoling him, and
right. And then you're like,
it was so weird. It was so
and then
too much.
Then you're like, that's when your voluntold D&I career starts.
Right, exactly. Because I'm also like, you know, then he's feeling like I'm dating this person. I'm in a safe place. Let me help you. Let me, yeah.
Right.
And
but so it's interesting you say, because that's why I was getting clarity on the when did the shift for his mom happen? Because part of me is thinking, well, I don't know what I would do if I don't know what I would do if I was in a situation of I'm a white person, I have, you know, white parents that then do that in terms of how do I, because I'm thinking, you know, you go after love.
Do you deal with it?
But and how do you deal with it?
Too, which makes it, I think, even harder. You're talking about your whole family.
Right. Because I thought about this too, because when I was, I went on it was a first date and one date only. When I was in my single times, and this was in my 30s. So this is, were we still in, this was when, He Who Shall Not Be Named was in office. But I go on this date from dude I met on Tinder. And we're on the date and we're talking conversation. And for whatever reason, you know, we're probably at the, you know, family, siblings. He says very casually, yeah, my mom's probably the most racist person you'll ever meet. And I'm like, what? Come again? And again, we're in the presidency era of he who shall not be named, because there is a drastic difference. There was a drastic difference for, again, speaking from my Morgan, this is Stacey talking, there was a drastic difference for me for when people then could start to say whatever the hell they wanted.
Yeah.
Those who don't believe it, I don't need to go down this political path, but again, if you're a white person, you don't have any business telling me. For me, I saw safety become more of an issue. People saying what they want to say. People feeling they could have a megaphone 100%. Because we had a white supremacist for a president.
Right.
But anyway, so this was during that time. So I say that because when you're dating, I'm going to get real clear that I don't need to fall in love with somebody. Like, I'm literally first date. I have no idea about this guy. So I don't even want my feelings to go down this path. If you are telling me you have racist family, I'm like, no.
And on the first date.
On the first date, I'm like, if you're telling, I'm like, one, that to me, like you mentioned, then you feel like you have to console him. I'm like, are you using me? One, so many thoughts went through my head. Yeah. Am I a pawn in some weird family dynamic? You trying to be like, haha, look at this, like a dig to mom. Mm-hmm. Am I trying to be a teaching moment for you? Am I some checkbox for you so you don't feel guilty? Because I said to him, well, so I'm like, let me take this in for a second. I said, do you not have a relationship with your mom? And he goes, oh, no, I mean, I do. So I said,
did you think that he realized that you were black?
He knew.
Okay.
He knew, because that's what, something. And I go,
I was like, is he one of those that's like, are you Italian?
And he knew, because I said, you do know I'm black, right? And I'm pretty sure race, I don't know if it was on my profile. Like, you can check it off.
He
but
confirmed.
Like, yeah. And I said, I took it in, did the listen, waiting. And I said, just took a sip of my drink. And I said, just curious. I mean, so do you have a relationship with your mom? He confirmed that he did. And I said, so, I'm black, right? Like, and I said again, my mom is white, my dad is black, I'm a black person. He goes, oh yeah. And I said, so knowing that, like, there's like a wedding coming up and your parents are both invited, it's a family wedding, would you bring me as a date? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I'm fucking. I said, so do you think that's something that I would want to deal with? Do you think
Yeah, because it's like on the first date, I will say that's the difference between.
I'm like, one psycho. I mean, he was fucking crazy.
Yeah, but like, but first date is like, I mean, I will at least say, the boyfriend that ex-boyfriend that I was talking about was like, that was saved until like, basically I had to meet the parents.
Yeah, until it's something to even worry about going down that path. Saying it out, right? I was literally like, dude, are you just trying?
Yeah, that makes
trying
me
to be
think
a
you're
lesson?
Trying to like, yeah,
and I'm
you
triggered.
And he's like,
I'm triggered because I'm
you.
like, like to your point, I've had the experience of the relationship where it was very, safe, and the family was safe in that it was safe. They were pissed. They were pissed with me, and they were pissed for me when things happened. Where race was involved. And then you date other people where you feel very loved and received by them, but you feel like, oh, they don't see me as a black person. They see me as a light-skinned woman with curly hair who is not black like them.
Right.
And not just for the appearance, for how I am acting or how I am, my personality. They are still thinking black means XYZ. Think of any stereotype. She shouldn't speak like that. Black is criminal, not black is Oprah Winfrey, is Obama, is George Washington Carver, is they are, again, doing the boxes and clearly haven't had either gone out of their way to or don't have close relationships with black people, where then the microaggressions happen and you're like, do I handle this? Because you're like, I want to be accepted. I love this person. And you're like, I don't want to be the teacher.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the person, like we talked about, when you mentioned the anti-racism, I don't have to be in the, Stacey Morgan, a black person, a marginalized person, doesn't have to be in the room. I'm like, well, that is definitely not happening because I'm in the room.
I'm in the room. And that's the thing. You were literally taking the words out of my mouth, because that's the thing where you're in the room and they're saying those things. It's like, the guy, like even him on that first date, which obviously that, whatever, crazy, but still, first date, saying that right in front of your face on the first date, then you're like, damn, how bad is it? And then what are you going to say with me?
Right.
Like, I just, the
That's
whole,
why I asked him,
in front of me, behind my back.
have a relationship with her? Because I was trying to gauge, I wanted to start with the most extreme. Not that I was being like, I was hoping, whatever. I was curious because I wanted to hear him say, no, but, she's my mom, so that's really hard. But it's a battle I'm always fighting.
Well, and it is that thing.
It wasn't even, I was curious. At that point, that was a date that I knew wasn't going anywhere. And it's when you're like, like a train wreck, you can't stop watching it.
Right.
It was just, I was doing it for the story. The date was for the story because I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And then the guy asked me to like pay the bill. And I was like,
oh my God.
I'm okay. I said, no, thanks.
No, I mean, just all these things are kind of flooding to my head, through my head because, and I almost feel like I blacked this out. I feel like I met that dad of the boyfriend I was talking about, where the mom got, was beaten in high school. I met the dad like a couple times. It was kind of like him and his dad were super close, and he would like randomly be like, oh, I got to drop something off or whatever. So I'd like see, but it was almost like the mom full on like that. Either she was avoiding me or they were both avoiding that like I would ever be. Cause I only ever remember being in a room with her one time, and it was not like I ever sat down to dinner. It was
God.
It was like, yeah, it was like,
and that's the thing. I've been in relationships too, where like, again, where I just don't think they see me as black. Met my parents, all that, they know, but they just in their minds have put you in a different category. Yeah, and it's so, again, it's the whiteness part that where they don't realize it. It was just like,
because it's the microaggressions, truthfully.
Microaggressions. It was like one time there was dating this person, and it was like it was actually about elections, and a family member said that they were going to vote for Hillary, and her comment, the mom's comment was, well, tar and feather you.
To the other sibling or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't think, truthfully, don't even think she knew the racial.
You, that woman did not know the racial context, and it was a fucked up coincidence.
Yeah,
that
it wasn't
referencing
about
a racist
right?
president.
And so I was like, the fuck. But there were other moments, and then dating this one person in particular that, like it was at a family Christmas party, and there was I don't know, they were doing like a gift exchange, and there was like literally like a dirt devil, like a mini handheld vacuum, you can use in your car or something, and it was black. And the one uncle's like, look, pick this gift. It's black. It matters. Swear to God.
No.
Swear to God. And I'm sitting there like just looking around this room of like 30 fucking people. Not one person. I don't think the guy I was dating at the time was he did not hear it. I know he didn't hear it. Like he was in a side conversation, like, you know what I mean? Because we talked about it on the way home, and he was like, what the fuck, like furious. I just got up and walked out of the room. And like,
truthfully, there's something about, and this is where
no one realized I got up and walked away. They were just like, oh, she's walking over there.
Yeah,
I
because
just was like,
they don't, I feel like like, okay, the overt racism in front of my face, like I know then you're saying awful, horrific things behind my back. The micro, and I'm just, okay, you're in a box, and now I'm like totally disassociating with you. But it's for me also, it's the people that the microaggressions. Like, it's the people that you know are not overtly racist.
Yeah, it's so
but they're
hard.
saying these microaggressions that they don't realize. And you're like, I'm not going to teach you because I don't have the energy to be that person.
Exactly.
But it sucks because
and to
at
make
the
it
same
awkward,
time,
a Christmas event, then I'm, no one's saying anything. I'm, as much as, I want to say something, I'm not going to speak up.
Right. You're not going to speak up. But also, it's then, I have to then think, well, is that you're saying that thing in front of my face and it's a microaggression. I don't even know if you realize what you're saying. But then at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, but then what do you say behind my back? Like, does that then to me means I don't know if you're the person that just says these ignorant microaggressions because you don't know.
Exactly.
Or because you're just able to say that thing in front of me, but behind my back, maybe you do randomly drop the N-word. Or maybe you do think, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I know that you're definitely not the person that's speaking up, that's going to come to my defense when somebody else says something outside of the family. And like, to your point, it's the microaggressions, because like this family, I was like, I felt very loved by them. Mm-hmm. But then there were times where you do have those, it's like your example before of the friend then that says, don't, the friend's parent that's like, I don't ever want you to date a black guy. Mm-hmm. You're then like, whoa, was I duped? Oh my God. Then I feel like this idiot. And I also was, there were times where it was like, yeah, I just totally felt like they don't see me that way.
They don't see me. And that's, I think that you've said it a couple times, and I want to point out that it's so important, because that, I think, is the thing that's so hard. It's, they don't see me for who I really am. Mm-hmm. And
I'm proud.
Well, but it also stunts your growth, because you're like, well, then, so does that mean I have to hide certain things? Yes. Also, does that mean that I have not shown who I am enough? And then I'm sitting here in fear. And then I also feel guilty because I'm not brave enough to speak up, but I'm also thinking protection. And it just sucks all the way around, and it stunts me. It makes me pause then with other relationships. You have to pick your battles, because we already are walking around paranoid and scared. And then I'm thinking, well, which thing do I then have to pick out and stick up for?
Yes.
It just sucks.
What's our heightened? And you bring up a great point, which I think is also speaking more for, again, our experience, but specifically as a biracial Black woman, is that, and this microaggression situation that I had, this was me dating a white person, so it was a white family. But like you're saying, it makes you question it. It's a blow to me, growing up in mostly white spaces where this is post college. Mm-hmm. I'm on this journey. I'm always grew up proud to be Black, but the Black culture I really had been exposed to for most of my life was family. And so then it's making me feel like a fraud. Yeah. A bit or something. Or like, not me questioning my Blackness, me very proud of that, but me being like, fuck, when I did have those moments of then having more Black friends and being in Black spaces in my adult life, or having those other conversations where I'm saying to, people ask too, like, do you think it would have been different if you grew up and your mom was Black or your dad, like, just being curious. Yeah. But it makes you question that. And it's also those times too where you've had the friends, mainly white friends and from home, randoms would say to me, do you like white guys or Black guys?
I know.
And I was like, I'm fucking living in a small town where everybody's white. So I'm like, yeah, I'm dating Hispanic guys. I'm dating Asian guys. They're not here. So what do you think I'm going to go after? I'm a young girl that's sexual and I want to fucking date. Yeah. What? And that is just like a fucking microaggression.
And it's also like, dude.
Or like saying when in college, then when we're dating, and like Kiki, our sister who's a year older than me, Kiki and I went to the same college. Mm-hmm. And, we were roommates at the time, Taos University, what up? Had a great time there. And again, that's when we're getting exposure to Black community, because we're coming from high school to college. Mm-hmm. And we're dating different people. We're dating white people, Black people, Hispanic people, whatever. We're out there having a good time. Mm-hmm. And then friends being like, oh, well, Kiki always dates black guys. And I'm like, because she's around black men now and she's a black person and that's who we're dating.
And also, it's just like, it's none of your business.
Who fucking cares?
Do I have
it's
to
none
say,
of your business?
would I go around saying, you only date white guys?
And
how would you feel? Seriously, how would you feel?
Also, a lot of you probably have only dated within your race because you're scared or you're listening to your parents, or it's what's available.
Yeah, but also it's that.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
But also on top of that, there is, because I've had this conversation before with some of my, black friends where for whatever reason that you are dating whoever you're dating, but also whatever race that you seem to consistently date, or whether you just seem to be that person that's always into the hippie guy or the whatever.
Exactly.
If whatever the reason, that's your business. That's your type. I'm not coming up to you saying, oh, you only date white guys.
Or you only date blondes. You only date little tiny girls that are shorter than you.
Right. Like that,
you only
part
date
of that
guys
is just
that are
natural.
6'5"
Part of that is
4'11".
literally natural. That is like,
it's who you're attracted
it's who you're attracted
or
to.
Who you're around.
Right. And like, I'm not judging you for that. So like, you don't get to talk to me about that.
I'm married to a white man now, Joe, Morgan's husband, again, is also named Joe, JD and Cease. He's a white person. He's a white man. I've dated black guys. I've dated Asian guys, Hispanic, and I say dating meaning like I've been gone on dates, been in whatever,
however many
situationships,
sexual, whatever. Yeah,
I was dating to find a personality type.
Mm-hmm.
I also grew up in a house that celebrated. Obviously, they knew date for who you love. So I do think it's also really sad because I'm sure I can't imagine being like, oh, I really like this guy, but like taking them home, because I'm sure there are people too that were like, did that thing. Let me save this person from this embarrassing situation, this potentially triggering situation of bringing them home to my parents. Like, there's got to be tons of relationships.
And I will say too, like, I don't know about you, but I think, I don't know, I feel like it's a good place to even wrap it up, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm just not maybe it's the headspace I'm in right now. Maybe it's just like what I want to share with the world. But we're talking about scratching of the surface of like microaggressions, right? Like, so I think I want people to just understand that, like, I'm not going to give you every story of the most racist thing that's happened, or the least but still microaggression thing that happened. Just understand that it's constant for us. Like, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I think my takeaway is, I don't need to tell you all of my stories for various reasons of my own trauma, my decision of what I want to share. But also, it's the understanding of these things are happening. And I'm not saying you're a horrific person if you've participated in some of these comments. I'm saying learn.
Learn and be aware.
You take the time to then educate yourself further and think of the things that you say and what you're experiencing, because I'm not going to do a series on microaggressions. I'm not going to teach you what it's like to hear all these 200 things.
Yeah.
I want you to just start thinking through and maybe paying a little bit more attention to the things that are said around you and how it make you feel, whether it was about a black person or a disabled person or a Jewish person or a Muslim person, like whatever the case may be. Yeah, or a woman, like that's I think the underlying thing for me, because I also don't want people to walk away from this thinking these are the couple things that happened. No, there's like thousands of things that have happened.
And this, I didn't get into the most intense.
No, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to, because I don't need to, and maybe there will be a time that we do, but yeah.
I will say this too. So that of the microaggression, but also again the having conversations. It's like, people like to say, the uncomfortable. It's not even about having the uncomfortable. Have conversations with people who don't look like you, maybe don't believe. Like, just be willing to get to know people who are different, and do walk down the street and make eye contact with everybody, and do not cross the street when you see a black man, and do not, also don't need to say to people. It's just like the same thing. If someone, I don't care what race you might be, if someone walks in a room and they're 6'5", you don't need to go, did you play basketball?
Yep.
You don't need to say shit like that. You just can, and also understand this is something that, even on the note of like the parents that said, I don't want you dating someone that's black or outside your race or whatever. There was this blog post I read, years ago, and I honestly, I wish I remember where it was or who wrote it. I don't remember. I just remember they use this analogy of like, you walk into a forest and you see maple trees, you see dogwoods, you see pine trees. You don't walk into that forest and be like, why are you a maple tree? Why are you a pine tree? Like, they're all trees, just like we're all humans. Just like butt out, stay in your fucking lane, let people live. And like, honestly, if you're those who are have kids that are, you know, getting that age of dating, curiosity, let them fucking live.
Yeah, because
The
like
kid's
it's
not
all
doing
under the same,
drugs and they're like being safe. Like,
and it's under the same realm too of exactly your kids, who they might date, but also what they hear you saying. Because I mean, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, with same sex, you know, or any kind of LGBTQ plus relationship, I can only imagine the constant microaggressions. And I think of that, I'm like, it's all in the same vein. And I'll give you this. Think of it this way. With us, they're saying these things in front of our faces and these microaggressions, you know, when they know what we are because they can see it. They can see the hair, they can see the lips, the skin, and all the things. With certain people, whether you're, you know, gay or lesbian, you can't see what they are. And you could be saying things in front of your kid, and your kid's going to one day say, I'm a lesbian. Like, genuinely think of that.
And trans. People are like, I
all
don't
of that.
understand it.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not going to go there, but it's not
all
for you
of
to
it.
understand.
It's not,
and it's just, there was this really great thing in a movie, a show I was watching last night, and it's called like Flack, I think, on Amazon Prime. But it was a trans woman saying to, in the storyline, a comedian that had a, you know, offensive bit about trans people. And
which I'm so over.
Yeah. And again, this was fictional. This comedian says something like, well, you know, I met them as you know, I knew them always as a man, and then saying about the pronouns. And so she says, you're a wife. What was her name when you met her? And so I'll just pretend it's me, you know, Stacey Williams. And what do you call her? What's her name now? Stacey Cease. How fucking offensive. How hard that is for you.
How hard that is for you. Exactly.
To call her something different than what you originally knew her as.
Right.
You know, and that, again, a whole other thing, but it's just like, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Watch what you say. Speak up at all times, but especially when people aren't in the room. And do keep having conversations. And I'll also say this, and I'll take this from the I've Had It podcast, where they said, if you are not pissed going into this election year, and if you are not voting for the marginalized, for everyone to have the same rights, you are doing your country, yourself, future generations a disservice.
Yep.
We gonna go there always.
Yeah. And I think the final thing that I'll say, and maybe this is the perfect place with our theme of just even how we start our podcast, but it's welcome in, welcome in. If you literally start your day, your feet hit the ground with the thought of, how much love can I put out into the world today? How welcome can I make those around me feel? Think about the power of what that does for your kids, for the people around you. When people feel accepted, they have the ability to take their thoughts, their potential to the next level. Like, think about that. If your kid feels so accepted, then they're like feeling vulnerable enough to be like, I'm this kind of artist and I'm going to make this, or I love this type of like play. Or if people are accepted, they are going to be able to rise to new heights. And that's what I think, like,
and help others,
right? Like,
life goes quick. Leave the best impact you have. Do the greatest good for the greatest number.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like the Girl Scout law, leave a place better, you know, than you found it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the
leave
same.
every situation, every interaction, you know, better than it started.
Yeah. And
you know,
if you've ever had a moment where you have felt hurt or judged and
or less than,
and that could be because of someone said something about your weight. Someone said something about, you know, oh, you're balding.
Yeah.
You're a man that's balding. Exactly. You're poor. You live in a certain type of home, whatever the case may be. And this is what I'm finding more and more, the older that I get. There's not one person, there's not one group of people that hasn't ever felt those things.
Yep.
It's just for varying reasons. And rather than leading with the judgment of what makes that other person feel as shitty as you felt on that shitty day, lead with empathy and lead with love. And you're going to be surprised at what comes towards you.
Yeah. Yep.
Welcome in, welcome in.
Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome good energy, get good energy.
Yeah.
We told you, come for the story, stay for the real talk.
Diffs. We gave you both.
We gave you both. Have a great day. Cheers.
Davis.